County, all-around A-plus guy. He is making an effort from a Gregory Swanson Way standpoint, which we will discuss today with Jim. This is perfect timing because this is before City Council tonight, so the timing is absolutely perfect. The man's very intelligent. We'll also talk news, the news cycle, with Mr. Hinchley today on the show. J-Dubs, my friend, we can do it when you're ready. Good Monday afternoon, guys, and welcome to the I Love CVille show. It's great to be with you on a Monday. I hope the weekend treated you well. My wife and I, my beautiful wife, my son and I, we made it around town. We went to Timberwood Tap House where we enjoyed a socially distanced and safe dinner outside, and we did some errands and shopping. And what I was impressed with Charlottesville and Albemarle County in Central Virginia was, A, how conscious people are of doing things the right way, and B, it seems like the consumer confidence is upticking a little bit. I heard this morning on CNBC that 46 million Americans have at least one dose of the vaccine, and I think there's a direct correlation with consumer confidence and reopening things in our neck of the woods and across the country, and this vaccine getting into people's arms. More on that later in the week. I want to spend 35 minutes or so with Albemarle Commonwealth's attorney, Jim Hinchley. Before we welcome him to the show, we're very grateful for Ting Fiber Internet for being a part of this program. It's the best internet in Central Virginia. It's not even close. We use it to power this network, and we have a $288 savings for you guys only through ilovecville.ting.com. Ting is crazy fast internet. Judah Wickhauer is the fabulous director, undoubtedly the North Star and the compass for this network. I need to say that more. We have very high standards here, most of the time standards that are unhealthy and can't be met, and he does an incredible job of, frankly, dealing with me. I can't put it any better than that. Judah, if we can go to the studio camera and welcome Jim Hinchley to the program. You're a popular man, a well-connected man. You have CBS 19, NBC 29, and the Daily Progress now watching you. And for the reporters and media that's watching, the story we're going to lead with is perfect for your outlets. And this is Gregory Swanson Way. Something that means quite a bit to you. First, good afternoon. Thank you for joining us, and I can't wait to learn the history of Gregory Swanson Way and Gregory Swanson.
Well, thanks for having me on the show, and maybe we can start out with that.
Sure.
Could Judah put the photo up on the screen?
Absolutely, and he'll give us a thumbs up when it's on screen.
All right. Well, what I'm asking to be shown is the photo of a moment, a very important moment in Charlottesville history, a very important moment in national history. This is the moment when Gregory Swanson's case had just been completed in a Charlottesville courtroom, and I'll talk a little bit about that later. But his case had been decided that he, as an African American, could be admitted to the University of Virginia. Okay.
And he's going to put it up. It's actually on screen now, and you will see it in a matter of moments.
All right. And so this was after the court's decision had been handed down. This was a groundbreaking decision, a civil rights victory in September of 1950. A long time ago. And so this photograph was taken by the people who participated in the case after the decision was handed down, granting Gregory Swanson admission to UVA. And the picture was taken on 2nd Street, what is now known as Market Street Park. If you can see from the orientation of that photograph, it's on the small low wall that surrounds that park on the 2nd Street side. And of course, the reason that they took the picture there was the federal courtroom was in the library. And that's the library now, the Jefferson-Madison Regional Library, but back then it was a post office and a courtroom. So that was taken to recognize the importance of what had just happened here in Charlottesville. And the people in that picture, of course, the caption shows, well, the picture now you can see in the center is Gregory Swanson. And to the left, as you're looking at the picture, is Spotswood Robinson, an eminent civil rights attorney. And to the right of Gregory Swanson, as you're looking at the picture, is Oliver Hill, and then next to him is Thurgood Marshall. These are civil rights heroes, national civil rights heroes. They were here in Charlottesville representing Gregory Swanson. And this was part of the NAACP legal effort to dismantle segregation in the United States that began in the 30s and continued on well into the 60s and 70s, culminated by Brown versus Board of Education, the case in 1954. So that's the moment, a historic moment in Charlottesville. So what are we asking council to do tonight? We are asking council to designate 3rd Street, which runs along the library, is connected with the building where this historic decision was made. We're asking council to designate that as Gregory Swanson Way as a way of bringing attention to this very important civil rights victory that happened in Charlottesville. So that's on the agenda for council tonight. Now, that's the moment, and that's the decision, and that's really significant. But I want to just briefly, I know we got a lot of ground to cover today, but briefly I want to go back and tell a little bit more of the story of Gregory Swanson that led up to this decision. Gregory Swanson had already become a lawyer. He had gone to Howard Law School.
Right.
And he was a lawyer, and he applied to University of Virginia Law School for a graduate degree. And he applied as part of the NAACP strategy to desegregate institutions of higher education and other institutions as well. But he was given the opportunity to present a test case to UVA to see if we could break down the barrier that was against him. And the law school faculty unanimously in 1950, in a segregated institution, the law school faculty unanimously voted to admit Gregory Swanson. And I'm a University of Virginia Law School graduate, and I'm very proud of the action that the law school faculty took back in 1950 to integrate UVA. Now, how did Gregory Swanson get into court if the law school faculty said, come on and be a student here? Well, the Board of Visitors said no. And so Gregory Swanson, with the assistance of the NAACP legal team, sued the Board of Visitors. It culminated in a decision that was made on September 5th, 1950, to require that Gregory Swanson be admitted to UVA over the objection of the Board of Visitors. And it's good for people to know that this decision resulted in the integration of the first university or college in the South. Wow. So this was a first for Virginia, but it was a first for the entire South. And it was a decision that was part of the line of cases that led ultimately up to Brown versus Board of Education. It's enormously significant, and what we're asking council to do tonight is to designate, give a historic street designation in honor of Gregory Swanson, and to bring attention to this very important event that happened in Charlottesville.
This sounds like a slam dunk. This sounds like a slam dunk. I mean, we have an African-American gentleman who is making historical grounds here, breaking the color barrier at the school here in Charlottesville. I mean, this sounds like a slam dunk.
Well, we're very happy that council is considering this, and we're very hopeful that council will see this, as you describe it, as a slam dunk.
Why is this important to you, besides the ties to the University of Virginia?
Well, as a lawyer, it's important to me because it shows the power of the law. And this was a triumph over white supremacy. And we're still fighting the fight, okay? No one says that the battle to create an equitable community is over by this decision, by Brown versus Board of Education, by any of the decisions that we've had for so many years. We're still in the fight. And so I think it's important for us as we go forward trying to create a more equitable community to know about things that have happened in the past that have advanced us in that direction. And to know that the power of the law is there for us to use to make those gains. Additionally, personally, I'm acquainted with Gregory Swanson's nephew, Evans Hopkins. And he and I have worked together to try to bring the story of Charlottesville, bring the story of Gregory Swanson to Charlottesville and get more attention. And to have a personal connection with somebody who's a family member of Gregory Swanson also makes this meaningful to me.
How does the University of Virginia recognize Gregory Swanson? In any statue fashion, in any plaque fashion? Is he recognized as an epic figure in history in any capacity?
Yes, the University of Virginia has acknowledged the importance of Gregory Swanson's achievement, and they have put a portrait of Gregory Swanson up in a very prominent place in the law school library. They have a lot of portraits at the law school, but I will say that the Gregory Swanson portrait is in a prominent position. So, and the Gregory Swanson story is described in a plaque that goes along with that portrait. In addition, every year the law school awards honors to students named in Gregory Swanson's honor. So they have an award ceremony every year, and they retell the Gregory Swanson story, and they make awards in his name. So they keep the story alive. But University of Virginia is very...
they prioritize this.
Yes. This is very important to the University of Virginia, and especially the law school, as I go back to reiterate, the law school faculty in 1950 was on the right side of history in this case.
It's great. And you know, I'm a UVA guy myself, and I had no idea about this. And this is a testament to your efforts here, because if a guy that's been in Charlottesville for 21 years, myself, who follows this stuff so closely, who went to the school, had no idea about it, having a sign that honors a gentleman that's courageous, that's a leader, that went through stuff that we can only imagine going through. I mean, I applaud you. Will you speak tonight via Zoom in front of council?
I hadn't signed up, so I'm not sure if I will or not.
Okay.
But I have definitely communicated with council, and I know a lot of people in the community have communicated with council.
This is very important to Councilor Snook. I've heard him emphasize this on the dais.
Yes.
Yeah, this is very important to him.
Yes. But yes, there's been a lot of work done to communicate with council, and I hope, I know they've heard us, and I hope they'll take this action tonight.
I was thinking about you in preparation for this interview. I'm going to make an analogy to like a coaching tree in basketball. Say Mike Krzyzewski is atop a coaching tree, and he has a lot of tentacles or branches that go underneath him. You are starting to have your own coaching tree. And this past week, I had a fabulous interview. I won't say she was a protege, but she was certainly a part of your team, your election bid, and Yaz Washington. And she sat in your chair, and she talked about why she was running for city council. She was truly a breath of fresh air. Yes. What'd you make of her announcement for council? You know her certainly better than I do.
I do know Yaz, and I think the world of her. And I was happy to see that she's thrown her hat in the ring for a lot of reasons. And I think she's very accomplished and has a lot of good ideas. But I also like the idea that somebody as young as she is stepping up to participate in politics, because that's what we really need. We need to have different perspectives, and I think the perspectives of her generation are really important to this community. So I'm excited about her candidacy.
Well said. And if I can maybe go down that road with you, we have an extremely intelligent 23-year-old African-American woman who grew up in this area. I mean, we're talking about awesome options here. Juan Diego Wade there, Brian Pinkston there, Mayor Nikiah Walker's running again. From your standpoint, what do you like about the Yaz Washington platform?
I don't know that I'm familiar with all of the aspects of it, but when I hear her talk about it, I really appreciate that she's grounded in this community and that she has the experiences, especially the experiences of an African American woman. And I just think that's so important in terms of developing ideas and participating in the political process to bring that perspective to us.
How about an open-ended question here? Albemarle County, where I live, city of Charlottesville, where I work, they go hand in hand. Most of us don't even know where the dividing line is between the two. And I'm curious from your vantage point, your standpoint, and just not even as a Commonwealth's attorney, just as a guy who bleeds Albemarle County and Charlottesville, which you do. You're a huge evangelist. You love living in this area here. What do you make of the latest news cycle and everything that's been going around here in our home? I know that's a loaded question for you here, and you can go any direction. I'm trying to do broad strokes here. There's been a lot of news. It's been tumultuous. I think that's safe to say. What have you made some of the news that's come out from, say, City Hall?
Well, that's a pretty big question. Let me start off by saying I'm like you. I live in Albemarle County and I work in Charlottesville. I work in Court Square, which is in Charlottesville. And this is probably not the response you're looking for, but I do want to say something about my living and working situation. And that is, and this does apply to Charlottesville and Albemarle, Charlottesville and Albemarle have reached an agreement to keep the Albemarle courts in Court Square.
I was going to ask you about this,
yes.
Jim. I was going to ask you.
And this is something that that has taken years, if not decades, to achieve. But it's terrific because the idea of separating our court system into two pieces and taking one of those pieces out somewhere into the county
It's foolish.
It was a bad idea.
Yeah.
And so I'm just thrilled that the Albemarle County Board and the Charlottesville City Council have been able to reach that agreement. And it benefits everybody, but it benefits not just the jurisdictions of Charlottesville and Albemarle, but when I speak of the benefit, I'm speaking of the benefit to the people who are served better by a combined court system, an easily a centralized court system. And so many people who are in the courts would have a great deal of difficulty if they had to go back and forth between two different locations. And I'm speaking about lawyers, prosecutors, court staff,
Everybody.
probation officers,
Yeah.
you know, people who serve the public. Separating the courts out, as was proposed, would have put an additional burden on public servants who are already stretched to the limit in carrying out their responsibilities.
And it would have negatively impacted our citizens that are already living on the margin the most. I don't know how many
Yes.
times I've gone into Charlottesville courts when I was supposed to be in Albemarle and vice versa.
Right.
And from a public transportation standpoint, having them aggregated in one spot just makes it easy for everybody. And the idea that we could take a court system and turn it into a stimulus for an economy or a stimulant for the economy is crazy. Because when I get a parking ticket, the last thing I want to do is go shopping for cashmere.
Right.
You know, I want to get the hell out of the court. So I want to ask you the question here that people are talking about. What do you make of council now saying we're probably going to go with Plan B and not build the garage, instead just allocate the spaces in the current garage to Market Street and give some money back for that land acquisition? Because that is, if I'm reading the tea leaves correctly, Councilor Snook, who's an attorney, I mean, he straight up said in the last meeting, the demand for parking perhaps is not there and maybe we shouldn't build this garage.
Well, I don't have well, I guess I have an interest in it, in parking in downtown, but it's not in my wheelhouse. What is in my wheelhouse regarding parking is whether the city's arrangements to provide parking for the court system is going to meet the requirements that Albemarle County has set out to keep the courts downtown. And my understanding is that the parking deck is not required. That was one option that was considered, and it was apparently the leading option for a while. But now, in view of things that are happening in our economy and happening downtown, there are alternate ways of meeting that requirement.
That's correct.
And so all I am concerned about is meeting the
spaces.
requirement and keeping the courts in downtown.
Fair. And he's exactly right. If I'm reading the tea leaves correctly, I try to follow this closely for you guys. The likelihood of this new garage being built in that Guadalajara Lucky 7 spot is falling dramatically. And I initially thought before COVID this was 100% going to happen. I would say this is below 25% now because the demand for parking downtown has been dramatically reduced because of COVID and the opportunity to work remotely from home. So much I want to cover with you here. Legalization of cannabis. COVID-19 has put tailwinds behind the effort to legalize cannabis because of the need for tax revenue. Budgets are in shambles across the country, certainly here in Charlottesville, certainly in the county of Albemarle. We now have something that's been in the pipe for a while, pun intended, legal. What do you make of the legalization of cannabis here, Jim?
Well, I think we saw it coming. Last year it was decriminalized. This year it was legalized. But I would sound a note of caution here. I think the legislature has clearly established a policy in favor of legalization, but the devil is in the details. And there's a lot of details that I think still remain to be worked out. And this legislation doesn't really take effect until 2024. It has a reenactment clause, which means that everything that was done this year has to be done again over next year. So I think, yes, it's a big step forward that the legislature has declared that's where we're headed. How it's actually going to look and when we're going to get there are still open questions.
I was disappointed with the legislator waiting until 2024 because I thought the priority was to, and you're going to have to help me with the words here, 3.5 times more African American folks are incarcerated or get in trouble with the law when it comes to this plant compared to white folks. I mean, and that's statistically a fact. I thought that prioritizing the legalization of cannabis from an immediacy standpoint would have showed that we are truly focused on social justice reform with our laws, and here's a perfect example. From my standpoint, maybe I'm reading this wrong, pushing it out to 2024 shows it's not a priority. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think the criticism that you just offered has been made by a lot of other people, and I think that's a legitimate point of view. And I will also say that this criticism has led some people to mount an effort to ask the governor to change the law and to make it effective this July. So that's where the battle is going now. The legislature's done what it's done, but the bill that the legislature passed is now on the governor's desk. And the governor has the power to amend it and to accelerate the legalization of marijuana. So I think a lot of attention now is going to be focused on the governor's office.
I think, if you were a betting man, would your instinct say he's going to do this? Because he's leading the charge.
I would say, I can't put the odds on it, but I would say it's a realistic possibility. And I think a lot of it's going to depend on what the effort is made by people in the community to reach the governor now with these arguments. So I think we're going to see a lot of activity directed toward the governor.
How does that impact your office? Let's hypothetically say it happens in July. Does your office get impacted by this in any way?
To some extent. Right now, because marijuana has been decriminalized, we still have cases that have a civil penalty, but we have very few cases. But legalization will eliminate any cases that we might have now. We really see very little marijuana prosecution in Albemarle County, and I suspect the same is true in Charlottesville.
From and maybe this is the wrong phrase, but just from like a law theory standpoint, if two gentlemen bantering back and forth, does anything happen retroactively for folks that have gotten in trouble with the law when it's come to marijuana?
Well, I think that the legislation provides for expungement, and that would be retroactive. Anybody who's previously had a marijuana conviction and is still on their record and still causing harm can get that expunged. So that's retroactive, but I don't think that there's any provision to retroactively go back and change what happened, other than to expunge it, and that should be enough, really. But there's no other plan to address past convictions.
Same questions for you when it comes to gambling. I mean, the same situation with cannabis, probably even more momentum put behind gambling. Budget deficits everywhere, and we see the incremental revenue, the new revenue possible from municipalities when it comes to gambling. Now we can do it. We see interest groups in Richmond, Bristol, Martinsville, the Hampton Roads area that are lobbying and ponying up hundreds of millions of dollars to try to build brick and mortar casinos. We haven't really seen anything from a Central Virginia standpoint yet. I would expect we would eventually. What do you make of, open-ended question, gambling in the Commonwealth?
Well, I think what you're talking about that may be coming is casino gambling.
Yes.
But we have gambling in the Commonwealth. It's
Sorry.
called the lottery.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
And as I recall, it's been a long time, but as I recall, the lottery was put in place for the reason that it provided revenue for schools.
For schools, right. Yeah. And the crazy thing is, the marijuana revenue is also going to go to schools. How crazy is that? The marijuana revenue is going to go to schools.
Yes. And of course, you know, that's a label that's put on it, but it doesn't really happen that way, because if the lottery produces $100 million for schools, then the legislature, which was previously putting $100 million of general revenue into the schools, just takes that money and puts it somewhere else.
Right. So,
but the idea of labeling it as for a school just gives
it's
better
called
feeling.
Perception.
Yeah, it's perception.
Yeah.
So all I can say is, and I haven't really followed much about the expansion of casino gambling, but I think it's just going to follow along the same track, which is, you know, this is a way to produce revenue, and let's call it revenue for schools or revenue for something else that we like, and it makes it more palatable.
That's right. That's exactly what's happening. It's management of perception or branding, what we try to do in this office for our clients. He's exactly right. You have every media outlet watching you on this program right now, Jim. How has your job been made easier and or more difficult due to this pandemic?
Well, it's been made more difficult. And you can imagine, I mean, the work that we do is very hands-on, very person-to-person. I mean, going to court, okay? So for a while, courts were closed except for emergency matters. And you can't close altogether. But we had months when the courts were closed. And so the work that we had to do was piling up, and now we're feeling the effect of that. The delay of cases that weren't heard when courts were closed is now falling on our shoulders to prosecute. So there's that. Preparation for cases, meeting witnesses, you know, talking to people. the kind of intensive personal work that you have to do as a prosecutor has just been made more difficult. We have barriers. I mean, we've got Zoom, and everybody's learning how to get along with these changes, but it's been difficult. It's been hard. Now, I think something that's really been important in the work we do is that we have responded to the COVID, the pandemic, by focusing attention on the jail and looking for ways to reduce the population of the jail. And it's pretty obvious that the jail is a congregate setting where it's very hard to control an outbreak if an outbreak should happen.
Right.
And one way to address that is to try to reduce the number of people in jail, give people more room to spread out, fewer people, fewer contacts. And of course, you know, the jail is not isolated. People come and go in the jail every day, the people that work in the jail. So we have a transmission path out of the jail if we have a problem into the community. So it's a huge issue. And you see this nationally. You know, it's gotten a lot of attention. But here locally in Charlottesville and Albemarle County, Joe Platania, the Charlottesville prosecutor, and I have made a huge effort to reduce the population of the jail. And we have succeeded. The population of the jail has gone down to levels that have not been seen for decades.
Put that in perspective.
Roughly numbers, you know, 400 plus down to, at times, a little under 300.
Okay, that's significant.
It's a significant.
Yeah, 25-30% here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it achieves the end goal, which is to, you know, have fewer contacts and have greater space for people, and also to have space open up where if you do have somebody sick, you can isolate them. So we've been, Joe and I, and Martin Coomer, who's the jail superintendent, and the defense bar, we all have worked together to achieve this. And it's really, it's taken a lot of work, going back to your question, but it's work that's very important to protect the community. Now, what I'd like to do is make the point. What has been the strategy by which we have reduced the population of the jail? We use a lot of different things. We use home electronic incarceration. We use, for cases that are ongoing, we recommended lower sentences. We do furloughs. We do...
What's furlough?
A furlough is somebody who's serving a sentence, let them furlough or go out of the jail for a period of time if they have a safe place to go, and we feel that it would not be a risk to the safety of the community, so they come back and serve their sentence later.
Okay.
Delayed reporting dates. If you have somebody who the court has told to report to jail in a month, when it's a common thing to happen, now report to jail in 3 months or later. But all sorts of strategies that we've used. But the main strategy is to say, we don't need to use the jail as much as we've been doing it. And that's what I ran on as Commonwealth's attorney. We need to have other ways of addressing criminal behavior than going to jail. Jail has been in the past a first response, and when it really should be a last resort. So a lot of the work that I've been doing with Joe Platania to help reduce the population of the jail are things that we're going to continue doing when the epidemic has passed, because we don't need to be doing that. We need to have a new, more progressive approach to criminal justice than we've had in the past. So what we're doing is really experimenting. And I was going to do this experiment anyhow to see how we could do things better and reduce the population of the jail, but it was forced on us.
Yeah, you had to do it.
Forced on us. Yeah. And so we really worked hard at that.
I find you fascinating, Jim. You mentioned Joe Platania. What do you make of his re-election bid?
Well, you know Joe's story. I hired Joe as a public defender, and he worked in my office for 5 years. And he left my office in 1999, so that was a while ago. But Joe's a terrific lawyer. He's a terrific person. He has enormous experience as a prosecutor since 1999, and in 2017 he became the chief prosecutor in Charlottesville. And he and I work together as partners on the jail and other criminal justice issues. We're both part of an organization that he and I helped to start, the Virginia Progressive Prosecutors for Justice, and we do a lot of work at the state level to try to get progressive legislation
I didn't know that.
passed. Oh yeah, it's in this last session of the legislature we've had enormous success. But anyhow, Joe is part of that. Joe is just terrific, and I'm grateful that he's serving the citizens of Charlottesville, and I'm hopeful the citizens of Charlottesville will give him another term in office.
You have questions coming in. Can we throw a couple to you?
Sure.
Okay. This one is coming in from Grace, who watches in Belmont. She says, Jerry, I watch your show every day. My husband is hooked now as well. Can you bring up the school metaphor to Jim that you did last week and apply it to the courts? This is what I think she means by this. Last week on the show, I was having a conversation with the CEO of Claiborne Education, and I said, with COVID, it's driven momentum behind Zoom on how kids are learning. And I said, with schools, take school reconfiguration in Charlottesville. They're talking $100 million for school reconfiguration for Charlotte, $100 million. Here we got these buildings that are massive, that are old, they don't have the staff to clean. And I was making this, I was having this open-ended, conversation on the show about, is the future of school really in this antiquated building that costs so much money to upkeep, that needs so much personnel to keep clean, that is poorly ventilated, that is dark from a lighting standpoint, or is the future of school potentially like this, and it just needs to get a little better? So Grace is asking, could that be the future of courts? Do we need this archaic structure, this building that's expensive to maintain, needs a massive supply chain to keep going, or do we do courts like this eventually?
Well, I appreciate the question, and my initial reaction is we're going to have courts the way we have them.
Yeah.
And this isn't going to change. It's too important to have, for example, juries. It's just not possible, I don't think, to have virtual juries, I think there's some room possibly for virtual witnesses, but for the process to move substantially in the direction of being digital, I think is unlikely, and it's not something that I would favor. But it's certainly worth thinking about, and maybe it's just because I'm old that I'm resisting this. But
well, I think it's because you're a people person. Don't
Yeah.
you just miss the human connection?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Now we do, and even before the pandemic hit, we do jail appearances by video.
Right.
Not for trials, not for important motions, but just for like a bail hearing or some initial step in a criminal case. So there's room for some of this, but overall, I think the criminal justice system really depends on the personal interactions. Think about just something as simple but important as judging credibility. The system requires the judge or the jury, if the jury's hearing the case, to determine when somebody testifies if they're credible. And demeanor evidence is critically important to that determination. And demeanor evidence of a
Zoom?
computerized picture of somebody?
Right.
No.
You can hide a lot that way.
No.
You were a great interview. Anything else? I'm mindful of your time here. We're 38 minutes in. Anything else for the audience that we're not thinking, that should be in the news cycle, that should be on our mind? We consider what you say tremendously here at this network, Jim.
Well, I do have something that I want to say. And going back to the progressive prosecutors and the work that we've done in the legislature, and we don't have time to go through everything.
Next interview.
Yes, next interview, and I'd love to do that.
Okay.
But really, really significant, really, really important is the General Assembly abolished the death penalty in Virginia this year. That is just huge. People have been working for decades to eliminate the death penalty in Virginia, and now it's done. And I am absolutely thrilled. Of course, I ran on a platform that I would never seek a death sentence. I've represented 4 people who were tried for cases that could have resulted in death sentences, so I know what our system is like, and I know that we need to end it, as we have done. But it is just an enormous step forward for Virginia. And let me tie it back in conclusion to Gregory Swanson, if I may.
Nice.
Virginia is the first state in the South to abolish the death penalty, just as the Gregory Swanson case marked the first time that a college or university in the South was integrated. So that's another first, but it's a tremendous achievement, and it's great to live in Virginia now when we don't have the death penalty anymore.
Amen. Amen. Thank you for your time. We are grateful. I will send you a follow-up email to continue to picking your brain and maybe see if I can persuade you to come on the show.
Sure.
Thank you so much, Jim. Judah Wickower is going to snap a quick picture of you here real quick, and then he'll walk you out to the door. This guy is good people. Jim Hingley, Albemarle County Commonwealth's attorney. 42 minutes with the man. I promised him about 35, 38, so I'm slightly over. Thank you so much for joining us, Jim.
Yeah.
Well, J-Dubs, if you want to get them out there. A couple more items we need to cover, guys, on the program today. We're going to talk some hoops. We're going to get to these comments here in a matter of moments. Thank you so much, Jim.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Oh, this comment came in. We'll read this here as Jim is walking. Jerry, that interview you did with Mr. Hingley was absolutely fascinating. I did not know the history of Gregory Swanson. I will watch the city council meeting tonight, and I hope they approve the name for this road on 3rd Street. Thank you to Mr. Hingley for bringing this to all our attention. That's pretty good right there. Yeah, thank you, Jim. All right, so a couple more items we want to get off our chest here as we dot the I's and cross the T's here on the I Love CVille show. We have Harrison Keevil on the program tomorrow. He's doing a digital food hall, His concept, a ghost kitchen. I believe the ghost kitchen is in McIntyre Plaza. And out of that ghost kitchen, he's running 4 different brands. I think he's got a deli brand, a sandwich brand, a stoner food brand, and one other one. So Harrison Keevil's on the show tomorrow to talk about his ghost kitchen and his digital food hall. We have a UVA basketball game tonight. It's a 6 o'clock tip against Miami on the ACC network. Now, the Wahoos have lost 3 straight games. Virginia's 14 in the coaches poll, 15 in the AP poll. They play the Miami Hurricanes, 6 o'clock tip on the ACC network. It's senior night, and it's senior night for guys like Sam Hauser and guys like Jay Huff. Jay Huff in particular, I'm going to spend 15 or 20 seconds talking about Jay Huff. Jay Huff is a national champion. Jay Huff was on a basketball team where he was a number 1 seed and lost to a number 16 seed. So not only a national champion, but he's the only number 1 seed to lose to a number 16 seed in the NCAA tournament. And Jay Huff is on a basketball team that saw its ACC basketball tournament stopped because of a pandemic and COVID-19. If you think of the 5-year basketball playing career of Jay Huff, you saw a man come to grounds at the University of Virginia with little athleticism, little strength, very little meat on his bones, but a guy who had tremendous talent and skill. 5 years and change later, Jay Huff is a married man. Jay Huff is a national champion. Jay Huff was part of the only number 1 seed to lose to a number 16 seed. Jay Huff had his season cut short because of a pandemic, and now Jay Huff is going to have his senior night against the Miami Hurricanes in the John Paul Jones Arena. I want you to really consider the career of a guy like Jay Huff and how he's developed under Tony Bennett. Because Jay Huff's development is a microcosm of Tony Bennett's coaching style and his coaching talent. Okay? You got a guy who was a stick as a first year, and now as a 5th year on senior night, has played himself into a potential NBA draft pick. Tony Bennett and coaching staff deserve that credit. 6 o'clock, Miami Hurricanes. Watch it. We'll talk about it tomorrow. My name is Jerry Miller. This is the I Love CVille show. Jim Hingley, Albemarle Commonwealth's attorney, was absolutely fantastic. Thank you kindly for joining us on a Monday. Take care.